Welcome to episode 17 of the Frog Rack podcast. For today's episode, I'm catching up with Craig Goddard. We'll talk about a lot of stuff, but I'm really interested in his collection of Ameerega dart frogs. Craig, thanks for joining the podcast today. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Good. Hey, we've known each other for a little while. We've both been around the amphibian hobby back when you used to live in New England. I'm curious to hear about when you first started keeping frogs and how your collection grew in those initial years of keeping amphibians. So why don't you go back in the Wayback Machine and tell me what things were like over 15 years ago?
Yeah, I guess to paint a little clearer picture, go even further back when I was a young kid, I just started out like a lot of us catching animals outside. You go outside, you see a frog jump, and you're amazed by like, wow, look at this tree frog, look at this leopard frog. And that was when I was young and I was being raised out in Wisconsin. I used to ride my bike all the time on these dirt trails. And every time you get to a puddle, there'd be like 50 frogs that would scatter. So me and my friend at that time, we'd always try to catch as many as we could. It became like a competition. We were pretty bad at it. We'd be lucky if we get one or two because they were really fast and we were just little kids. But that turned into me then going home and noticing there's baby toads everywhere out there, certain times of the year, spring peepers and the tree frogs. And it was kind of funny because my parents wouldn't let me have any of these pets.
Mm-hmm.
And I would take these, I don't know if you remember, they're like the mega size soda bottles, the grocery store Aldi's.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of that? They used to sell their own brand of soda, and it would be like in these monstrous, like, I don't know, they were like bigger than 2-liter bottles. They were huge. So what I do is I'd take them all out of the trash. My parents weren't looking, and I'd poke holes in it and turn them into mini terrariums.
Nice.
And then I would put them in my closet and put a light in there for them. And I got away with that for about a couple months until one of the tree frogs started calling. And then my parents were like, what the hell's that? And I was just like, oh, I guess the cat's out of the bag now. So they came in my room, saw all these soda bottles lined up with
Nice.
spring peepers in it. And I was feeding them and they're like, how long have you been doing this? And I was like, it's been like 3 months now. And they were all alive, fat and happy and healthy. And right then was kind of like when I got addicted to reptiles and amphibians in general, because for a longest time I wanted a turtle, which I actually never ended up getting a turtle, but kind of went into the frogs. And then when I got a little older, we moved out to New England. And once I basically got a job and I could afford the stuff, that's when I started buying stuff. And I actually got into newts and salamanders for a lot longer than I was before tree frogs or dart frogs. That's how I met you, is through newts and salamanders. I think we were talking about fire salamanders and the Strachey and Crocotus line of newts. And I did the newts and salamanders for probably like 2 or 3 years. I think that would be like 2007, somewhere around there. And I love newts and salamanders. They're probably still my favorite thing. But as you've said in some of your previous podcasts, they're a lot of work, like to breed, to keep them and just make them live forever and have them as a pet. One of the easiest things to have, but it's such a jump in difficulty when you start breeding them. Like, it's not hard to get them to breed. It's hard to raise their offspring.
Yeah.
And that was a big challenge for me. I was able to do it with some limited resources back then. I was a kid just getting out of high school. I didn't have a good job or nothing. So I did what I could and I bred some of them. And then when I realized how much effort it was taking, I realized this is probably not the thing for me to do right now in my life, time-wise and effort-wise, because I had to go to college and all this other stuff. So I kind of went from newts into tree frogs, which tree frogs are also very time-consuming.
Yeah.
I wish I had just done poison dart frogs from the beginning.
Right.
They're the least time-consuming thing, but I love tree frogs. I've always had a soft spot for them. And when I saw, Philomedusa bicolor, the giant waxy monkey frog, for the first time in a YouTube video bred by Mike Novi, around that time, I think it was like 2009 or 10, something like that, I was like, man, I got to have those. And then I started keeping tree frogs, and I was kind of dwindling down my newt collection, and the tree frogs were a blast. But then they also require a lot of space. So then you have to breed them, rain chambers, all this other stuff, which I did some of them, but I couldn't do them all. And I went, you know what? This is probably something later down for the road for me also when I have my own house. Because at the time I was still with my parents, moving into an apartment, just didn't have enough space. But I always kept some as like pets mostly, just because I enjoyed them and I didn't want to not have any. And then I got into dart frogs. And I got into dart frogs probably around the year 2000 and 2010, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say 2010. And I started with just a pair of Lucamellas and a pair of Santa Isabels and went from there. I made a ridiculously huge tank for them. I think I had like a 150-gallon tank from when I had the newts. And I'm like, oh,
Nice.
this will be awesome. It was cool, but it was hard to find the frogs. The tank was so big. And I don't know, I just kind of, it took off from there. I was keeping just some species like that. And then I think it was about a year later, I saw my first Ameerega, Ameerega. They all say it differently, but
Yeah.
I just say Ameerega. But I saw some at a reptile show in New Hampshire, and I fell in love with them. I didn't realize how like beautiful they were and how brightly colored they were. And that's kind of when I started keeping Ameerega, and I've kept them ever since. So they've kind of been my favorite go-to dart frog to keep.
Nice. Nice. And around like 8 years ago or so, you and I both ended up, our lives are totally separate, but around the same time, we were both moving
Yep.
to a different place. So I know you downsized your collection. What did you downsize to and why?
Yeah, so I had a really big collection that I was hoping I could take with me to move to Tennessee when I left New England. And, you kind of, once you are in the position to move and you see how much you have to do, it's really hard. And I said, you know what, we kind of could use the money to help pay for the move too.
Yeah,
So I had some morphs of Ameerega that I don't know if they're in the hobby anymore or locales of Ameerega. One was a greenback triv. I had a group of four of them, a 2.2. And unfortunately, I can't find out who I sold these to because I've been trying to figure it out. I was stupid and I thought, hey, I'll keep track of these people through my Facebook account, my Messenger account. Well, when I went to the hospital one night and I got home, my Facebook account was hacked. I lost all my pictures, all the contacts through Messenger, so I couldn't even remember the person's name. And I also had another locale Trivs called I think it's called Bajo, Bajo Triv. It basically is like the three striped Haluga Canyons, but the stripes are like all scattered everywhere on their back. It's a different
cool.
locality.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll see those two we might see them down the road if someone imports them if they can, but I don't think we have any more in the hobby. But I downsized that and my tree frogs to make the move. And I think I only had maybe like 12 tanks, which to some people still a lot, 12 tanks worth of frogs to bring down me to Tennessee.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, there's, I think people who have stayed in the hobby long term all have some regrets of
Hmm.
animals that have gotten away. And I think now, I'm older, have been keeping frogs for a long time, over 2 decades. I definitely appreciate that just because you see something available, even regularly for a few years in a row, if you
Hmm.
really are interested and love that species or morph and you want to work with it, get it and put in a serious effort. I've been saying this on like every episode of the podcast practically
Yep.
because the market for the amphibian hobby in North America, it's more fickle than people think because it is really small and
Hmm.
everyone can't keep and breed everything, especially when you look into dart frogs. There's just so many different species and morphs.
Yeah.
uh
And if you try to keep everything and breed everything, you'll burn
yeah,
yourself out.
you'll burn right out. That's right.
That's how a lot of guys end up leaving the hobby. I mean, some have life issues, life happens.
Yeah,
Some guys have divorce or something, or medical issues. But yeah, but if everything's good in your life and you just try to keep every species, you'll burn yourself out pretty fast.
right,
It's a lot to
right.
do.
Even if you try to do it as like a small business and everything, like the wonderful people who are running small dart frog businesses, they're doing great, but like even they have to find a work-life balance. So
Yeah, they
so
definitely
what's your
do.
what's your current collection like? What are your goals of what you keep and why?
Yeah, so when I moved down here, I honestly thought I was taking a break from the hobby. I had to start a new career, live in a new area that I wasn't familiar with. In the middle of some stuff with my fiance, just getting her down here too, trying to get her family down here also because her mom wanted to move down here. So there was a lot of things going on. So I took a break, and that was right at COVID. So I kind of backed out. I think it was the first year of COVID is when I backed out and I moved. And then after COVID was done, I actually got the stuff that I did keep, which was still some of my Ameerega because they were still my favorites, and the Atlantica tree frogs. They started breeding a lot, and I had no clue what the hobby was really like. I had so much excess, and I put them up there, and they sold like crazy. I was like, wow, I didn't realize people were looking for these. And it kind of gave me that little itch that you get sometimes in this hobby when you're doing really good things, you're really successful, you want to kind of do some more, you want to bring in a new species, and it kind of reignited my passion that I had for this hobby. And I was like, man, I really want to get back into Ameerega because at the time that I was in Ameerega prior to moving, I think I had every species of Ameerega that was available in the hobby, minus like one of them, and it was a new one that was coming in. Um, so I was really heavily invested in them, and I said, let's do that again. And I started looking around, and I noticed that Ameerega was actually pretty hard to find again. Uh, if it was really only a handful of people still working with them, and I thought that we'd see more by the time I came back after like a 3 or 4 year break from the hobby. And it wasn't the case. And I went, I was doing a really good job with them. And I think if I enjoy them much, maybe I should just work with them again and try to get them to a point where they're not so hard to get. And that's kind of what I'm trying to, that's actually a lot what I'm trying to do is work with the Ameerega because they're my favorite species of dart frog and just make sure that they're available. I would like
Right.
it if everyone could get them. What kind of motivated me to do this was seeing some of the behaviors of individuals online where there was some gatekeeping going. There was people that would get them and then not do anything with them. And it was frustrating because it's like, I would first reach out to some people and I'd say, hey, I used to breed these. I know they're hard to find. Do you want any help? Because like, I'm not, I'm not trying to make any money off this. I'm like, I'd say, I'll give you any help you want because I worked with some of these species before. And some of the responses I got from people were not like
Hmm.
great. So then I kind of said, well, screw it. I'm going to just do it then.
Yeah.
I'll just work with Ameerega and breed as many as I can and get them out there and not worry about how rare they are, what they cost, and all that stuff. So that's what's kind of motivated me. Plus some other factors, coming back after COVID, it's like this hobby completely changed. There's so many new people, which is great. But I saw some of the older people back off even more. And after talking with some of these people, it's like, hey, we try to give advice, but there's so many new people coming in at once that they don't listen to the people who, not most, a lot of them don't listen to the people who've been doing it the longest or who have a lot of experience. They kind of just listen to the first thing they're told,
Yep.
which sometimes they're led down a wrong path. So then when someone that has a lot of experience tries to correct them, they're kind of met with resistance and they get pushed back. And then you see these newer people then complain, well, how come the older people aren't helping? It's an interesting dynamic where it's like, like the older guys are trying to help, they
Yep.
get pushed back, and then other new guys want help, don't get the help, and then they wonder where are these guys that have the experience. And things that I'm seeing when I came back was I was shocked when I saw the size of froglets that people are selling nowadays. When I was in the hobby, there was kind of a general rule for certain, like some species were different. Like Ameerega, in my eyes, have always should always be around 5 to 6 months old, but the size has to correlate with the age. You can't just pick
Yeah.
a number and just go off that. And that's what I'm seeing with a lot of these newer frogs is, there's people advertising them on morph market right now, and they still have a tail. It's insane. And it's like, well, they go, well, the frog's 2 months out of the water. I'm like, okay, but it's tiny. It's the size of a pencil eraser. It's not old enough to have a strong enough immune system to handle stress from being shipped. And a lot of these newer people don't understand this because they think this is normal, and it's
Sure.
not.
Sure.
So I kind of had a chip on my shoulder where I'm like, man, I just remember when frogs were a little bit bigger and people had a much better time working with them. And as a moderator on one of the Poison Dart Frog group pages, I think it's Poison Dart Froggers, I get messages sometimes where people are like, hey, these frogs I bought, they're just dying. And I look at them and they're tiny. They're the size of a dime.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, what do you say to them besides, you shouldn't have bought them that small or they shouldn't have been sold to you that small. They definitely needed more time to grow. With Ameerega in general, I've seen some people try to push them out a couple months out of the water, like if you were with a Leucomelas or a Tinctorius, and it just doesn't work.
Right.
Ameerega really need to be around 5 to 6 months old, and they stress out very easily when they're young.
They
And
they come out of the water real small, right? Smaller than like a
oh
tinker or
yeah,
Rodis. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, some of the pepperi can come out pretty big,
Hmm.
like the Abicio and the other ones if you feed them really good as tadpoles. But generally, for what they are versus the adults, it's pretty drastic. Like the Trivitatas that I have, call them Trivs, they're one of the biggest Ameerega, and they come out so small where they're on springtails for the first couple weeks.
Right.
And you're just basically feeding them every day, keeping them on leaf litter, and you're just trying to get to them at point where they eat a fruit fly. And then once they're on fruit flies, you're good, but you still got to feed them every day.
Yep. I am not sure how I feel about how common it is to be selling tadpoles,
Hmm.
dart frog tadpoles in the market right now. Obviously, several businesses are doing it. I imagine they're having good success, or else they'd
Yeah.
stop doing it if every customer was having a hard time. What do you think about selling tadpoles? Do you have an opinion? Would you do it?
I think no, I wouldn't do it, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. I think when it comes to selling tadpoles, it needs to be done by people who know what they're doing and who can take those chances financially and have stock in case something bad happens.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, a lot of my collection when I rebuilt it this year or last February when I was buying everything, I went crazy and bought all that stuff. I could only find tadpoles of some of the Ameerega I wanted because no one was raising them up. So
Right.
I was forced into the tadpole market. Luckily, I think all my tadpoles I bought from Frog Daddy through Alex, and
Yep.
I mean I probably bought 100 of them, maybe more than 100 at this point, and I've only lost like one or two. I talked with him and we kind of figured something out where he just threw me a couple more when I needed some more and I ordered some. But there's other players out there selling tadpoles that I've heard horror stories of, and I really just do your research, go with someone who's got, a good review, a good experience with. I like how Alex does it because he raises his the tadpoles individually, so I know that there's no possible issues of them stunting.
Yep.
I've seen reports of like if you raise too many tadpoles communally, the hormone they put out in the water will stunt their fellow brothers and sisters,
Yeah.
and you'll have
Communally,
issues like
or
that.
by communally you mean even if they're sharing the same water?
Yeah, so there's only two species of dart frogs that I've had good luck communally raising. Epidobates, if I said that right. No, someone says
Yep.
epidobates or whatever. And Ameerega.
Hmm.
Those are the only two that I can think of that are in the dart frog group off the top of my head right now that I've had good luck raising them communally. But they're in aquarium setups. They're like in full on filtered, completely live, natural aquarium setups like you would for high-end freshwater fish. Everything else when it comes to Tinctorius, Reigniting, thumbnails, we don't count Pamilio. They do their own thing, or obligates. And the other stuff like that, Leucomellas, they all need to be raised by themselves. I know some people have had luck raising them together, but I've also seen a lot of stunting from that. It's just, I don't know. I just don't want to take that chance. And
Sure. Yeah. I feel like specifically with maybe the Ameerega, that maybe really healthy tadpoles where the buyer and the seller are in great communication to make sure that the tadpoles get set up quickly in very similar
yeah,
conditions that they were raised in. That is probably more successful than trying to sell a 1 month old froglet, right? Like that tadpole is probably a
oh
little
yeah,
bit more hardy than that newly metamorphosed froglet.
yeah. With Ameerega though, like you got to have fish tanks ready to go. If you're buying tadpoles like Ameerega and you want to raise them communally, you got to have a cycled fish tank going. I have
Yep.
multiple 5.5 gallon tanks where it's just for Ameerega, so I can put them in there, and that's helped out a lot. The other stuff like Leucomellas and Tinctorius and Reigniting, you can get those and put them in cups. There's nothing wrong, and I have stuff like that too in my collection too.
Yeah. You were talking about how the dynamic between newer hobbyists and old timers, and how sharing information can be kind of frustrating. That's one of the reasons I felt motivated to start this podcast, was to just have
Hmm.
all sorts of different conversations that can be shared with the community on the record as far as just experiences and insights in keeping amphibians, because I see the same dynamic. I always teach a little history lesson that 15 years ago, before we all migrated to social media, we were in the forums, and it was just such a different experience sharing information, because if you were someone who wasn't too keen on spending a lot of time on the internet, you could just check in,
Hmm.
share your little bit of information, answer a question or two and disappear. Or you could be on there every single day, following every single thread, chiming in with your 2 cents. And it wasn't perfect. People still bickered and argued, and there was still drama and differing opinions and everything. With social media, though, when you do engage one another in maybe the Facebook groups or something, that conversation, because there's always new information being fed into social media, the
Hmm.
conversations just disappear and are never going to get visited again. Like no one's going to go searching. For the most part, people don't go searching Facebook before they ask a question. And so I
Yeah.
see why people who want to be generous with their time to answer questions, you can burn out because you can only answer the same couple questions so many times, especially if in your generosity to share your wisdom, it just turns into bickering and arguing. And you're like, why am I bothering to do this?
Yeah, well, the one good thing, like I miss the forums.
Me
Back
too.
to Talk to the Frog, if anyone remembers that one. That's a really old
Mm-hmm.
one. That was pre-Dendro board.
Dang, that's old. Yeah.
Caudata. Caudata, am I saying that one right?
Yeah.
That one's
Yep.
still going on. I just don't use it that much.
No one
But
does. Yeah.
it was so much better. I think you got better information on those. You got better quality information because people were taking legitimate time out of their day to log in on there, go on their computer, because we didn't really have smartphones at that time where you just go on
Sure.
there right away. A lot of people were using laptops and computers, and they were taking their time to write out information or give their advice. And also, it encouraged people to go look for the advice too and search through the history of stuff because there's a search feature, and you would get like 4 or 5 posts, maybe more, and you would read through them all and you can make a better determination for the answer you're looking for. The problem with Facebook and social media is everyone wants an answer right away. And the people, not everyone has the experience to give the right answer or the right advice sometimes. So some people who are new, who don't know any better, just take the first answer they hear. And the guys who are more experienced, a lot of them, they're busy. They're running
Yep.
businesses. They do this as a side hobby, or they got families and stuff like that too. So they can't be on there 27. And by the time they respond, there's already been 10 other answers. A couple of them might be right, half of them might be wrong. Who knows? And the person can get more confused that way. I prefer the forums. I wish it was
Yeah.
something that we go back to and do.
Take
And
it.
also, you had more moderators back then too. Like
Sure.
there was stuff being moderated. Like they didn't want you to spam the same question over and over. If a question was answered perfectly and the community liked it, well, they locked that thread. So when you search it, it's the first thing that pops up. I
Right.
mean, how many times do you hear the same question on Facebook over and over and over and over? And you're just like, you're trying not to be rude, but you're like, man, if you just search it, you'd find the answer. Like, and
Right.
even still, Dendroboard
But
still pops up if you search things.
yeah, I was about to say, but search where? Search the Facebook groups or search an old forum?
Yeah, I you could do both. If a lot of younger people that are newer to the hobby, they're more inclined to just do like it on their phone, and they're probably going to want to stay within the app that they're using, like Facebook, Instagram, or whatever. So they can search it in there to try to find it too, because you can go to the Dart Frog groups, search your question sometimes, and it can pop up.
Yep.
And if you Google it, it sometimes pops up the groups, but also will pop up that question in Dendroboard because Dendroboard is still technically alive. It's still there.
Right. Right. Yeah. So on this podcast, we'll have more episodes where we just dig into Facebook groups and answer questions on the podcast to sort of deal with this exact thing where there are great questions being asked. Mostly, I mean, I find that the Poison Dart Frog based Facebook groups, like the top 5, are really excellent groups, very well moderated with lots of good contributors. So I don't have an axe to grind with them, but it's the
That's
nature.
because
It's the nature of social media where, like you said, in the forums, the best information got sifted to the top and stayed there.
Yeah.
And was in your face and or searchable. Whereas just frivolous repetitive conversations or sort of like dead end conversations where questions weren't really answered, they just fall by the wayside. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you also had to make an account. That was a big thing too. Like, yeah, anyone can make a Facebook account real fast, and look how many bot accounts there are, spam accounts on like, I know Dendroboard once in a while we run into a spammer or someone who was trying to scam them, but they got caught pretty quick, and there was more effort to get an account in there and to get going. Talk to the Frog too back in the day. So, and plus like a lot of these people became friendly with each other and they formed friendships from meeting each other.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just like, Facebook, you got like thousands of people in a group, like 20 something thousand, and you barely ever see the same person ask or say something. You'll see the same person answer things.
Yeah. You get to know who the moderators are.
Yeah. And I'll say most of the Dart Frog groups on Facebook, a lot of the moderators are people like you and I have been doing it for a decent amount of time. Some even a lot longer than that, longer than I've been doing it. So we at least have that.
Yeah. I don't want to sound too curmudgeonly. I do keep saying like one great thing, new people bring energy and like they're so eager to engage. And that's a really positive thing for the community and for other people. And so like one example I give is like the internet doesn't really need another how to do a 3D background tutorial. Like there's a lot of that out there in any format you want. YouTube, TikTok,
Or how to make a
Instagram,
springtail culture.
or how to right. That information is there times a million. However, resigning ourselves to reality, the way social media works nowadays is if it's not being put in your face regularly, you never see it. So someone
Mm-hmm.
doing a how I start a springtail culture video and putting it on TikTok, I mean, that's not a bad thing to do. It's helpful because a lot of people who are just passively, casually getting into the hobby or something, they're not going into Dendroboard and searching 20-year-old threads to read
Mm-hmm.
about how grumpy people like me used to do it in 2003.
And
So
there's
no,
and things
yeah,
have changed. Yeah, some things have changed for the better. Like
right,
I don't remember a long time ago many people using calcium clay for springtail cultures. It was mostly charcoal.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
I mean, that was what, 10 years ago when it kind of started taking off where people started using calcium clay. Now
mm-hmm.
that's what I do. I like it way better than charcoal. To me, it's a lot better. So there's some good things like that. The way everything is now with Facebook and social media, there's everyone's got a different answer. There's 1,000 different answers. And it would be hard. It's hard for the new people to come in here and kind of get on the right path if they're lucky enough to meet some of these guys at a reptile show or at a
Yeah,
frog meet and kind of build a relationship that way. And, don't they're not going to come outright and say, I'm going to mentor you. They might just become your friend, and you just learn more that way and they kind of
right,
become a mentor. That's the best way to learn nowadays. If you can just be friendly with some of these guys and just kind of be humble and let them show you their tricks and what they do. That's how I got into tree frogs I guess I hope that you can get him some days. Mike Novi in Ohio, he does a lot of stuff with rainforest junkies with the tree
yeah,
frogs. And he, me and him became friends because we love frogs. We like heavy metal music. We talk about that stuff all the time and we have a good friendship, but he also became like a mentor to me when it came to the tree frogs. And if I didn't have him, it would have taken me twice as long, maybe even longer to figure some of the stuff out that I'm doing now.
yeah,
So it helps if you can find that on people.
yeah. People like Mike have wisdom from experience that they themselves just take for granted, but people like you and me, or if you're getting new into tree frogs, like just listening to Mike or having him answer some questions is invaluable.
Yeah.
Hey, so what else has changed in the hobby since when you first started? Remember when people started talking about bioactivity, and like everyone who had
I was
been
just
keeping
gonna say
dart
that.
frogs, everyone who was keeping dart frogs just pulled out their hair and was like, yeah, you mean just setting up good naturalistic
Yeah.
vivariums? Like, yeah, we've been doing this since the 80s.
Yeah, we used to just say we're just gonna set up a natural vivarium. And that
Right,
was it. Like
right,
everything else was kind of, assumed. Yes, you're gonna use plants, you're gonna use, ABG mix and, cork bark and different types of wood and stuff like that and sphagnum moss and things like it was just kind of like that's part of the whole deal. Bioactive to me, I hate it. I just don't like it. I don't because I know what it is. It's a marketing term. It's remember in the early 2000s, I think it was like the 2010s or 2007s, and it kind of went on to like 2015. They put the word smart in front of everything to make the person want to
yeah,
buy it.
sure,
Smart watch, smart car, smart phone, smart this. And it's like, it's just technology getting better. That's really all it is. It's just the newer version with technology in it. But it was a marketing ploy to make people feel comfortable and good about their purchase. Because back then I remember I want the smartphone, not the regular cell phone. It's like they're the same thing. Just one's called smartphone. I'm not going to go too far into that, but
yeah, yeah,
the bioactive thing, I kind of get it for people who aren't in the dart frog hobby. But even then, like even a lot of gecko people that were doing natural vivariums,
mm-hmm.
they always had like a couple. Some of them were in the dart frog hobby. It's not like you were just in the dart frog. These guys were doing multiple things, but even they called it a natural vivarium. I'm building a natural vivarium, a natural paludarium. Just that's what they
Right,
would say, and it was all understood. I think it's good marketing by the gentleman who kind of pushed that and had that going. But I think it's also I think a double-edged sword where it's good marketing, gets you away from using plastic stuff,
mm-hmm.
plastic plants and all that, which I'm not against. They have their place.
Yep,
And actually when you start breeding some of these hard to breed tree frogs, some of that stuff is you need it. But like it was a good marketing term and it got people in the right direction to go with natural stuff, but I think it's caused another effect where people are too relaxed. They see the word bioactive and they think that's good. I have to
hmm.
have it in my tank. It's bioactive. to the point where I've seen people on Facebook go outside and collect sticks and rocks from their backyard and throw them in a dart frog tank.
Yeah.
And they're like, "What? This is bioactive, right?" I'm like, "Well, technically, yeah, it is, but what we used to do is we always tried to balance making these little glass boxes with living material in it, with plants and wood and all this. But our goal was to keep it sterile and clean so that when we put the frogs in there that we were spending lots of money on, they didn't have, you know, some type of skin rash or blisters or die or something happened to them half a year to a year in the tank's life cycle. We also tried to avoid putting things in there that might contain pesticides or fertilizers in our tanks. That was just what we did. So I think I hear bioactive nowadays and I almost cringe. I'm just over it. It's never going to go away. I sound like an old man
Right.
saying this, but
Right.
I'm not a fan of it because I think it's causing some problems. And I think people are just too, well, it's bioactive, that's good. It's like not necessarily.
Yeah. I
And
I
then they
remember.
slap it on everything.
Yeah, I remember like.
Everything's got a bioactive tag on it so they can sell it too. Oh, this cork round is bioactive. Well, no kidding. It came from an actual plant or a tree.
Yeah.
This ABG mix is bioactive because I threw some springtails in it. Well, no kidding. We did that before. We put ABG mix through springtails in it. It's definitely more of a marketing ploy to get people to
Yeah,
buy the stuff to me.
it has certainly caught on. I mean, it's probably done good for the reptile hobby. I mean, I remember like in the late 90s, one of the reasons why amphibians appealed to me so much was dart frogs in a naturalistic vivarium. And when you looked
Yeah.
at like, you know, leopard geckos and bearded dragons and ball pythons and even geckos back in like the early 2000s and stuff, it was all, I mean, never mind the 90s, it was like repti carpet and a plug-in heat rock, you know.
Yeah.
And so the whole
It's pretty bad.
naturalistic vivaria, that's what, along with how cool dart frogs are, that's what sucked me into this part of the herp hobby.
Yeah.
And I always used to be like, why would you even want to keep, like, if the way to keep a bearded dragon is repti carpet and like no plants, no live plants, just like a fake cactus and stuff, like if that's the way you're supposed to keep a bearded dragon, why would you even want to keep one? Like that's what it felt like in my mind. Like that the only reason, like part of the appeal of keeping herps in captivity is to set up like a museum level exhibit. And that was so easy to do with dart frogs because they can be in relatively small planted tank. And you can get away with it. But yeah, I remember like the week that the word bioactive was first used on Dendroboard, and it was not very well received. And everyone, like you said, people thought it was just like, it's a little bit too cheesy. It's a gimmick. Like, what do you mean bioactive?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's to get the people who weren't doing any of this
Yeah,
to get into this a little bit more. It's a brilliant marketing tactic. I'm not
sure.
gonna hate the guy or whoever created or whatever. It's brilliant, but it's also like you hear it so much you almost want to rip your hair out. It's like at first I was like, whatever, just ignore it. It's not a big
Yeah,
deal.
yeah.
And it's all you hear, and you see it slapped on every product. You see it on every Facebook little short or YouTube short. Bioactive, bioactive.
Right,
And you're like,
right.
just make a nice tank and let's enjoy it. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I just recorded with Chase from Houston Frogs, and so anyone listening to this episode with you, Craig, has already had the chance to listen to that episode with Chase, but you haven't. And we discussed this same topic, and the way I pitched it to him to get the conversation going was that if perhaps bioactive is so mainstream now, which is great, but it might be that people misunderstand. I see in the reptile end of things, for them, bioactive just means actually use substrate and put in
Yeah.
springtails. And so for them, like that's what they mean by the word bioactive. A lot of people is like, oh, I'm gonna actually use substrate instead of no substrate. And if I put in cleanup crew, which is hilariously, I don't know how anyone uses the acronym CUCK with a straight face when they're talking about cleanup crews, but that's besides the point.
That must be new. I never heard about that.
Oh my gosh, CUC, cleanup
So
crew.
They put cut crews in there.
Yeah, they're like, hey, I need to buy some cucks for my terrarium.
Yeah, we might want to change that one, guys.
Whatever. I'm like, oh, is this the bioactive people talking again? So anyway,
Yeah,
that maybe people reduce it to like too simplistic of an understanding. And then they're really surprised when mold grows on their cork bark.
yeah. Well, I mean, like I said earlier, you see people grabbing stuff out of their backyard, throwing it in there, or they make a trip to Home Depot and they don't know how to sanitize the plants or get rid of the fertilizer properly. Either they're wondering why their frogs are dead or why they got this weird bug in their tank all of a sudden, like they got cockroaches all of a sudden or centipedes in there. And they're like, where'd this
Centipedes,
come from?
yes. Oh my gosh.
It's like, and the thing that drives me nuts, and I wish, and I'm sure the people that watch this will agree with me. I hope they maybe they do, is there's so many good vendors out there that sell clean, quality products and plants. I mean, Any Herp's one of them that sponsors
Yep.
you for your show. Frog Daddy, Glassbox Tropicals. Oh, I feel like a jerk that I'm missing a couple more. I just blanked out on top of my head. But
Yeah,
there's
there's a
there's
lot.
there's guys out there that are selling these plants, the wood, the springtails, the dirt, the ABG mix, all this stuff at the same price or cheaper than what you can typically find at Lowe's and Home Depot. Years ago, you could find the plants cheaper there, but you didn't get the nice variety of plants. But now you go to Home Depot and for like a pot of pothos, they want $35.
Yeah.
It's like you could go on Frog Daddy's website with $35 and buy like plant cuttings for 3 or 4 species. Yeah, they might show up small, but these plants grow really fast.
Right.
Within 2 months, they'll be halfway across your tank, and then you have more cuttings to trade with other people. So, I mean, I don't like using I don't like the term bioactive because it's not what we have done for years. We always tried to use clean, sterile products. We worried about pathogens. We worried about fertilizers and all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff getting in our tanks because we know it could kill amphibians really fast or cause problems to the rest of the tank. And you put all this work, I mean, hours and hours doing these really nice tanks. And some people, they'll spend days constructing these beautiful tanks. Why do you want to have to tear it down or look at it as a complete failure because, introduce something that you don't want? And I don't know. I mean, I always get this too from newer people where I'm pretty avid on Facebook. I'm kind of against using plants from big chain stores.
Yep.
Not saying it can't be done. It's just a lot of the new people don't know what they're doing when it comes to sterilizing them and doing it the right way. And I get I haven't had any issues with my frogs yet. And I look at their history. I'm like, I don't say this to them because I don't want to be a jerk and keep fighting. But I'm like, based on your activity in the group, you've only been in the hobby for half a year or to a year. Sometimes you don't see the issues that stuff can bring into your tanks till a little bit later. Or they have 2 tanks. They got like Lucamels and some Maraudis.
Yep.
Well, I'm someone who's got 60 plus tanks. I wouldn't want that stuff spreading in my tanks or causing problems because if my stuff starts dying, that's detrimental to me.
Sure.
That's a big hit.
Sure. If you got a plant, maybe you traded with another hobbyist and so it's coming out of their tanks, or maybe you did see a species of plant you really wanted at Lowe's and you bought it. When you get it home, what would you do with it to clean it?
Well, there's a thing called quarantine. That's going to be part of the process that a lot of people newer to the hobby, when you say the word quarantine, they kind of look at you like you're got, 4 eyes on your forehead. They're like, what? There's multiple things you need to do. You need to first clean it off, just like in a sink. Just get the old dirt off, spray it down, rinse it. It's going to be dependent on the plant species because I mean, I've melted begonias and stuff too.
Yeah.
Like they're easy to melt trying to do this right. I don't off the top of my head. I have it written down in a book somewhere, and actually you can find it on Dendroboard. There's literally step-by-step thread on how to disinfect plants. I use a little bit of bleach, water it down. I forget the parts per bleach per water, but that's what I do. And you soak the plants in for I think it's like 5 or 10 minutes. You let it dry out, and then you can do it again if you feel like you need to. And then I set them up in bins in a quarantine setup and sphagnum moss ABG mix. And it's just a big plastic tote bin with a little bit of ventilation, and I'll grow the plants in there for half a year to a year before I use them.
Yeah,
And then by the time you do that, you can take cuttings off of them, or you have really big plants.
Yep.
But if you buy from like a place like Glassbox Tropicals, Frog Daddy, or some of these good vendors that have had really good reputation, good history, I mean, I would still look over the plants and make sure there's nothing that stands out. But I've had really good luck with trusting stuff from places like that and just putting it right into the tank after I kind of rinse it off with no issues.
If it was grown,
so that's why.
If it was grown frog free, not in a frog tank.
Yes, that's important too, because a lot of people get cuttings from people when you buy frogs. That's going to be the person's call. They're going to have to look at it and see if they want to trust it or not. But I would still recommend cleaning it off, disinfecting it, putting it in a quarantine setup, and letting it grow out before you throw it in a tank.
Yep. All right. So obviously, Ameerega are your project, and you've seen their popularity sort of wax and wane over the years, and that's part of your motivation for keeping them. I think with them specifically, I think the fact that Mark Pepper's Understory Enterprises, the amount of frogs he breeds every year has decreased. I think that's part of the reason with Ameerega and a couple other things, because for quite a few years, I'm sure you remember, most Ameerega, if you wanted something, you could just get the Understory Enterprises email list, and the
Yep.
couple times a year that he was importing, what you wanted would be available. But when he downsized a few years back, and there's not just this regular supply of, let's say, Ameerega pepperi, then like they seem to disappear from the hobby. What's your take on that, and what have you noticed?
Ameerega, unfortunately, have been kind of like affected on three different, I guess, three different things that affected him at once. Yeah, if Mark stops working with him or he slows down, that's a big hit because back in the day when you would buy Ameerega from him, a lot of it was like sub-adult to adult. Like you got some really nice, healthy, great
Oh yeah, he
looking
always
frogs. And
shipped
you
really
still
big
do.
frogs. Yep.
Yeah. And now that the demand has gone up, you're getting mostly froglets or like set in between like a froglet slash sub-adult stage, which is not a big deal. It's still fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But Ameerega, unfortunately, if I can remember correctly, I could be a little off on my timeline on things, but they have been affected. We'll start with first thing is Mark. If Mark stops breeding them or slows down, that's the first thing. The second thing is popularity of other species coming into the hobby have hurt them a lot to where when they first came into the hobby, I think it was like right around the corner, right around that time, Pumilio started coming in right after.
Mm-hmm.
And all these guys that bought all this Ameerega, they wanted to go buy the Pumilio, so they kind of sold off what they had to make room for Pumilio. And I don't know where all those Ameerega went, if everyone was really capable of working with them, because we'll get to why they're a little harder to breed than most dart frogs.
Yep.
But then Ameerega got popular again for a little bit of brief of time, like right when the Pumilio kind of craze was kind of teetering out. Then all of a sudden large obligates came in.
Yeah.
And you saw people not even just sell their Ameerega, but they also sold their Pumilio. And we might be missing some of the locales of Pumilio that we had in the hobby just because it got moved around so much in a quick period of time for people to make room. And I'm not trying to just blame people. I mean, it just happens,
Yeah.
something new comes in, people want it, they make room. It's not their fault. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't want to sit here.
it wasn't anyone's
Yeah.
obligation to maintain a species in the
Yeah.
hobby. Yeah.
So then they went large obligates. I know Alex at Froggy, I think he saw this ahead of time and was like, I need to go make a Pumilio project. And I know he's doing that.
Right.
And that's why he started that, because he didn't want to lose all these. So Ameerega have gotten kind of tossed around.
Yep.
You'll get like a good group in, maybe one of them passes, and then the guy who has it sells it to someone else. They can't breed it, and then they sell it to the next person, and they kind of get tossed around. And then all of a sudden you're looking around going, how come we can't find this frog anymore? Why is it so hard to find? You have things like the orange head pepperi. They were kind of getting up there in popularity, and then all of a sudden they're just like gone.
Yeah.
It's like
I
you
noticed
can't really
that.
even find those things anymore. There's a handful of them hanging around, but you just can't find them like you could before. And the other thing is they're not easy to breed because they are seasonal breeders.
Mm-hmm.
They're not like your Tinctorius. They're not like your Auratus or your Epidobates where, you feed them heavy, you missed them, and they breed. The other
Right.
stuff is pretty easy. You can sometimes get lucky and catch lightning in a bottle with a group of them where they will breed a lot. It's hard to just assume that's going to happen. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes you get lucky if your group's really good. But they definitely respond a lot to time of year, weather that's happening where you live. And if you were good enough ahead of time to supplement them and pump them up and feed them heavy to make sure they have the reserves to produce the large clutches that they can produce. And then another thing is why we don't see as many as we should is I think some of the advice. So I guess there's a fourth reason. This is what I just thought of in my head, is that some of the care advice early on, I've gone away from following that and I've had better results. A lot of people were like, oh, they need really, really, really big tanks.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to have like 5, 6, or 8, they do great in groups, which I started that way. I didn't have a lot of good success right off the bat. And I said, let me keep them like Tinctorius. Let me keep them in pairs and smaller tanks, but give them plenty of places to hide so they're not tempted to jump because they can jump really far. And that has been a game changer to me. I don't do water features. A lot of people were like, oh, they need these elaborate waterfalls and creeks.
Yeah.
In nature, they're found near them, but they
Let me
don't need
pause
them.
you there. If you were, so I have
Yeah.
no experience with the Ameerega, and if you would have asked me just from what I know from like what I think I heard other people who have had them or care sheets or dendroboard or whatever, that's what I would have said was 36-inch long tank. They do great in groups. They need to experience a cool season, like cooler than all the other darts. And I remember being told
Hmm.
multiple times, like, people would chime in and be like, yeah, I'm having a hard time breeding them. And like often one of the first sort of like parroted, people would just repeat this advice, whether they knew it or not. They would say water feature, water feature, water feature. And so, yeah, all those points you just made is exactly what I was under the impression of as being sort of the standard of care for them.
Yeah, and turns out they're actually pretty easy to breed as long as you do certain things throughout the year.
Yeah.
And they remind me a lot of like tree frogs and how you set them up to breed, where you have to kind of do things ahead of time before you have your spring storms. Like I live in Eastern Tennessee. Our spring weather is pretty crazy here, so it gets them going. Yeah, so like everyone wanted these big groups, and they're not like Tinctorius where they'll like kill each other.
Right.
They don't do that, but they do have a weird social dynamic in large groups, and they can show signs of aggression. And the way they are so different than what we're used to with Tinctorius or Rhodus and stuff like that, or even Epidobates. They're pretty close to Epidobates. There's actually a lot of similarities with how they act with them, but they're really bad at eating each other's eggs. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have a male and a female and they lay, and the female leaves and the male is guarding him and he's not doing a good enough job, another rival female will come in there, stomp on him, and eat him. I've
Gotcha.
seen it in real time. I saw the male, he's like laying on it like this, covering him as much as he can, and she's trying to grab the eggs from him. So that's a problem. And when they breed, it's pretty quick. I mean, you'll hear them calling and calling because they're loud frogs. And if the clutch gets eaten and they don't want to lay another clutch
Yep.
till 6 months from now,
Yep.
that's it.
Gotcha.
You're kind of you're kind of in trouble. So yeah, the way I keep mine is I don't keep them in small tanks, but I like 40-gallon and 18 cube tanks, depending on if it's a pair or trio,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes I've done a 2.2 in a 40-gallon. But the thing I've noticed that helps a lot is you got to have plenty of hides, like a ridiculous amount of hides. I put cocoa huts everywhere. I sink them into the ground. You can put them up high, you can put them up low, get creative with it. But that's a really big deal because that way it slows down any egg eating that they try to do. Typically it
Yep.
gets them away from each other if they need to, and if they do get scared of you. So Ameerega are known as pretty flighty frogs. Mine, except for the exception of one species I have, they've all gotten so used to me I can go in there and pet them like a dog.
Yep.
It's crazy how they completely change when they get used to you. But anyways, if you have a lot of cocoa huts that are down into the ground, like you kind of bury them a little bit, you don't just leave them on top, you kind of sink them in.
Hmm.
They want to jump down and in. It's like diving under a leaf litter. So they want to go, that's instinctively what they want to do. They don't want to just jump and fling themselves into the glass.
Yeah.
If they know where there's a hide, they won't venture super far away from it. They know where they can run to. So I use cocoa huts, flat pieces of cork bark tubes, and the frogs, after a couple weeks, know where all the hiding spots are. And if they want to get from me, they just dive right in there, and that's it. And they stay in there, and they come out right after I leave. And once they understand that you're there to feed them, they really just care less. So they lose
Sure.
that that what everyone fears of them smashing their face in the glass, because they can jump fast and far.
Yep.
And if one ever gets out of your tank, it is one of the scariest feelings ever because they are fast and they cover a lot of ground. I had one get out of the tank and I chased him halfway across my house to catch him.
Yeah.
So, and it
Yeah.
happened all in like 10 seconds.
I've heard that Trivitata are like the most capable of jumping far, but they're probably all that way.
Yeah,
Huh?
for distance, I would say your Trivitata, Silver Stone Eye can really jump. They're like little bulldogs, but they got really strong, powerful legs. Surprisingly enough, the ones that I fear the most getting out are like the Bastorai, like my Chromes. That's
Yep.
the one of them that got out. I mean, that guy was so fast because he's not the biggest Ameerega, not the smallest, but perfect size to just be super fast. And I mean, he's just going like super fast. I couldn't catch up to him. Basically, I had to wait till he went under something, and then I caught him under that, and it was pretty scary chasing him. But yeah, they're really quick.
Do I
Another thing I
remember?
think I was
Go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
You first.
Oh, okay. One thing I think I had said too is I don't really do water features because you had mentioned
Oh
one of the
yeah.
things is like, oh, streams and waterfalls. Like you can do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I've had better breeding success without them. All I do is I basically dig a little hole in the front of the tank where the substrate barrier is, and I use the filter foam a lot. And I create like a little pond with standing water, and I just drain it every so often. And, if it's a time of year where I know they're not really going to breed, but I need to feed them heavy, I'll let that drain almost all the way. And then all I do is fill it up. And I check their cocoa huts every day, and I pull the eggs right away when I see them.
Yep.
Because you don't want to leave them in there. I've tried leaving them in there, and he'll come back and half the clutch could be eaten. If you have pairs, you don't have to worry about that with pairs, though. So that's why I've kind of shifted my focus to keeping them in pairs, because it gives you a little bit of leniency if you
Gotcha.
don't see the eggs right away.
Gotcha. It sounds a lot like the way I have my Mantella set up with on filter foam, in leaf litter. Of course, my Mantella are in really large groups, like 24 frogs per tank.
Yeah, and you can do that with Mantella easily.
Yeah, seasonal breeders.
Mm-hmm.
They like to
you'll
perch.
notice.
Do they like to perch on broad leaves? Is that a thing about Ameerega? I remember hearing.
Yeah, so I don't know if this whole time you've been interviewing me, there's been a yellow bassarai nonstop chirping. I don't know if it will come through the video or not. He's literally on the tallest leaf in the tank calling. So at nighttime, what a lot of them like to do is, especially the smaller Ameerega, they really like doing this, like the Hanelli, the Belingus, the Ingiri, the Pongs, all those little small ones. At night, they'll actually find like a big broad leaf and they'll climb up high and sleep on that at night, gets them up off the ground. So there's probably something in the wild. And I've heard stories of guys camping out in the rainforest where they're like, you don't want to be on the ground because there's so many bugs and things on the ground at night. So they always say, like, if you camp or sleep somewhere out there, you want to be lifted up off the ground. So I wonder if that's what they're doing, just getting them off the ground so they're safer. But yeah, they'll do that. They'll use all parts of the tank too. So, I mean, they'll climb up high, they'll stay down low. Typically, they're found more down low. They really only climb up high, mostly at night.
All right. Just a few more husbandry questions about Ameerega. I'm sure you have a regular dusting routine. I'm sure their staple diet is fruit flies, but anything else interesting of note about their diet?
Yeah. So if you plan on keeping Ameerega and you don't want to deal with crickets, stick with the small species like the Belingus, the Ingiri, Hanelli, the Pong. I call them Pongs. There's a longer name, but I don't want to butcher that. Every time I try to say it, I butcher it. You can feed them Heidi and Melanogaster for their whole lives. I would still say if you want to breed them and you're set on it, you still might have to get some crickets to kind of gut load them and get some weight on them. Because even for little frogs, they still produce a lot of eggs. Now the larger ones, if you want to keep them healthy, you gotta give them crickets. They can still eat Heidi and they'll actually still eat Melanogaster, but it's not going to keep weight on them. Melanogaster, I only give them that when I run out of everything. I have to wait a couple of days for my crickets to show up. But yeah, I mostly feed mine crickets. That keeps them nice and fat. You can gut load them. And Heidi is kind of like an in-between thing. If I don't feel like giving them crickets one day, I just go to Heidi, and that keeps them nice and fat.
Nice. You already mentioned this a little bit. You raise tadpoles communally in basically aquariums.
Yeah, you basically set up like a live, like they keep the little cherry shrimp tanks.
Yep.
Do like a 5.5 gallon, set up with lots of Java moss, a sponge filter, Indian almond leaf, things that they're going to hide under, and use like a good substrate that's going to have nice bacteria growth on there. And I feed them every day. They are very hungry tadpoles.
Yeah.
Other species I don't have to feed them every day, but these guys definitely seem to benefit from everyday feedings.
What do you use for tadpole food?
A lot.
A little of everything.
Yeah, and they eat everything I give at them, so I've just been like, it works. I stick with it. I mean, I like the Hikari brand of wafers, like the algae wafers. They've got a green bag, which is their algae line, and they got this orange one, which is a mixture of algae and shrimp.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have a carotenoid-based one, which is more for color. The only Repashy product I use is a Soylent Green. They really like that. They go crazy for that. I have bug bites, soldier fly larvae. They'll eat anything and everything you give them. They're not too picky.
For my Mantella, I use the Soylent Green as a binder, and I'll use a bunch of Hikari products or Tad Bites, the Tinkman Herb stuff.
Yeah, I use that too. Tank Man herbs. Yep.
I use all the stuff. I grind it in a mortar and pestle to powder, and then I mix it in when I'm mixing up the Soylent Green gel. And then I put it in a petri dish in the fridge, and then just spoon out a little chunk of gel every day.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're getting a little bit of everything. They're not eating only one food, but it is all mixed together and congealed
Hmm.
together with the Rapashi product.
Yeah.
Yep, cool.
Yeah, tadpole care for them is pretty easy. Room temperature. They don't do aquarium heaters. Just keep them like at 70
Gotcha.
degrees and you'll be fine. But they like a little bit of movement in the water. So that's why I say keep them just like a fish tank and they'll be fine. Now the thing is with them is you have to check when you see them sprout back legs, that's when you have to check on them every day. The moment you start to see front arms starting to want to emerge, they'll look like they have like little elbows like this,
Yeah.
like it'll almost be like it's coming out of their skin. You should grab them and move them into a 190-ounce tank with maybe like an inch of water with a bunch of stuff like sphagnum moss stacked in there and Java moss, ways for them to get out. Because the moment they grab they grow front legs, they'll just drown.
Yep.
They're terrible at getting out of the water. So you have to be on them. You can't just wait till you see a froglet climbing up the glass and remove it. That won't happen. They'll be dead.
At the height of my dart frog room, which was mostly just Aratus morphs, I never
Hmm.
did the whole tilted cup for morphing thing. I thought that was it took up too much space. It was too contingent on you making sure you're looking at every single tadpole every single day to make sure they don't drown. I used lots and lots of for every morph I had because I wanted to not mix them up. I'd have a 2.5
Hmm.
or 5 gallon fish tank. And I'd set it up the same way you just described, like 1 inch or less of water, some filter foam, lots of Java moss and pothos. And anytime I'd see a tadpole close, I could dump it in that 5 gallon tank and it could live as a tadpole for however many more days it needs. But whenever it did pop its arms, I didn't need to notice it for it to be fine climbing out of the water.
Hmm.
Yeah, like I said, I never did like that idea of tilting cups and everything.
So there was something I shared with a couple other people that I talked to about Ameerega that has worked for me in helping them get out of the water. Yeah, I know some guys still tilt their containers and stuff. If you got the space to do it, that's great. It does kind of take up a little bit of space when you're breeding a bunch of stuff and you have to
Yeah.
start tilting everything. But I went to the 190-ounce container
Mm-hmm.
and I started buying these things from Glassbox Tropicals. They call them like EpiWeb branches or something.
Yep.
So they're actually, you'll see them in people in tanks. They're like a weird material that grows moss and stuff really well on it. Well, if you take them, there's a line that goes down the middle. You can rip them in half like this, and there'll be a nice flat surface. I just take those and I lay them in the water, and I fill the water to almost the top of that branch, and these frogs will climb right out to it. You'll come
Perfect.
in there and you'll see all these little like brown, little gray, little blobs
Yeah.
out of the water on the branch, and you can collect them. I go into a film can and grab them. If they jump back in the water, you got to get them out fast
Yep.
because they'll die fast. I
They'll
don't know what's
drown.
wrong with them, but it's like they go in the water and decide now's the time to breathe. So you got to get them out quick, not like they're gonna die in 10 seconds, but if they jump in the water and you walk away thinking, oh, they'll come back out, you sometimes could lose them that way. So it's best to just fish them out of the water at that point.
Yep.
If you saw them sitting on land already.
Yep. Things you would never think to do without experience or advice. Yep. Cool.
Yeah, and I've lost tadpoles and frogs, and that's how I learned. So
Yeah.
hopefully, if someone watches this, they can just do what I say, so they don't have to, or take some of the advice.
In the dart frog hobby, the 99.9% of everything we have is captive bred. There's not a lot of wild collected imports these days, but Ameerega trivittata is one of the species that is regularly every year coming in as wild collected. Do you know what country they're coming in from? Is it Suriname or somewhere else?
They're probably being sent out from Suriname, and they probably are in Suriname. The two that I see, there's the green triv.
Yep.
So there's a bunch of trivs, trivittata. I'll call them trivs for short. There's your three-stripe Haluga Canyon, which is one that you'll see Understory offer, which is one that I breed a lot of. And then you have green shriv, which is the one that comes out of Suriname, which is just a greenish yellow stripe on each side of their body. And I'll send you pictures so you can post them of this too. And then there's orange shriv. I don't like calling them red.
Yeah.
When I see one that's completely red and there's more than just one oddball that's red, I'll change my mind and start calling them red. red frogs sell really well, so I'll
Yeah.
call it a red trib. And most of them are orange, really deep orange. Then you have greenback tribs. Like I told you, that I don't know if we have those in the hobby anymore. Bajo was another one. And there's even more tribs out there that have different localities of them that we haven't had in the hobby. So there's a ton of them out there. But yeah, you'll see those two from Suriname
Yeah.
a lot because
I'm
that's
under
where
the
they're coming
impression,
out
I
of.
brought it up because I'm under the impression that they don't acclimate well as wild collected. Is that, do you have any experience, or have you heard from people? Would you advise people to
So
stay away
yeah,
from wild collected?
if you can buy captive bred, stick with captive bred. I mean, it's just as simple as that. If you're someone who has experience with Ameerega already and you're looking for bloodline variety, or you're just looking for something unique that's a little different, I say go for it. But, and usually those people have years of experience behind them, so they're
Yeah.
better equipped. If you don't have experience with Ameerega, stay away from them because they stress out really, really badly. And the wild caught ones are very flighty, and they will be the ones that will jump and smash themselves into the glass because, they're from the wild. They don't know what's going on. And you can keep them and get them tamed down. I have in the past. But if someone was to work with the wild caught ones, sorry, my chair is giving me problems here. If you do work with the wild caught ones, definitely quarantine them for at least a year, just because they sometimes will come in with parasites and issues. And I would set up a big quarantine tub and just make that a tank for them for at least a year, get them good and healthy, feed them, let them kind of relax a little bit. So when you open the lid, they're not freaking out. And then at that point, you could transition them to like a nice glass aquarium. I don't see them being too popular for too many people wild caught ones.
Right.
I see that more as someone like myself or another guy who's been working with Ameerega. Like we just want something new bloodline. Like I have those green tribs and I actually thought about getting a couple wild caught ones to have another bloodline, but mine breed really well and do so good that I'm like, I'm not in any rush.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a lot of work to bring in wild collected, and it's with a collection your size, it's a lot of stress that like you really need to take quarantine so serious that why risk it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Another interesting frog that you've worked with for a bit is Boana Atlantica, a South American tree frog that is not very common, that look like little green boogers. Tell me about those.
Yeah, so funny enough is my favorite tree frog for the longest time, and it still is my favorite tree frog, is Boana. God, now I'm blanking out. It's Boana Atlantica, but there was another one, Boana.
I don't know. It's a huge
Hyla.
genus. There's like hundreds of them.
Yeah. No, well, there's one that looks exactly like Atlantica, and it's the one that always comes in. And I'm just blanking out on the name of it.
I wouldn't
it's
know.
the one that you see wild caught.
Yeah.
I know what's it? Wakiri has it.
I'll look it up for you. Keep talking about
Punctata.
What is
Sorry.
it? Punctata?
I don't know. I was blanking out.
Yep.
Yeah. So when I liked it a lot, and I wanted, it's called Hyla Punctata. They changed it to Boana.
Yep.
When I ordered mine as Punctata from a guy that was importing it. And he's like, yeah, I can get you a male and a female. So I was like, sweet, I can never find females. And when we got it, right away, he calls me, goes, man, these look different. These don't look exactly like the Punctata that we ordered. And we did a lot of research, and I spent probably about like 8 months with him and another couple people looking at them, to the point where we're like, these are Atlantica.
Cool.
They show some of the signs of the color, some of their behavior, temperature tolerances and stuff like that. So we're like, yeah, they're Atlantica. So they're really cool frogs. They're actually better than the Punctata because they're a little bit more tolerable to cooler temperatures. Where the Atlantica are found in the wild, they're at a higher elevation. So they handle a little bit cooler temperatures in your frog room. They're not as crazy spastic as the Punctata was when I had them. Like the Punctata I had were hyper little missiles. They're a little bit bigger, and they have a little bit more of like a bluish color to their belly than you would see with the Punctata. But yeah, I got those, and as I know of it, I'm the only one that was to breed them and introduce them into the hobby.
Right.
That was 4 years ago. I bred them. 5 years ago, I think I bred them. And then I raised all of them up to adults because I wanted to expand my collection, because I only had 1 female and 3 males. So I was like, I need females. So I raised every single one up to adult, and then I sold all the extra adults. I know a couple people had them breed for them, but it was kind of more of a situation where I said, hey, I'm sending you a gravid female. She has eggs in her belly. You need to have a tank set up like this, and you will have eggs in 2 days.
Yeah.
And they got eggs in 2 days, but they didn't raise the tadpoles right. So, I mean, I haven't seen anyone else really offer them. I mean, I brought them to the Tinley Reptile Show. The third time, it was like the third or fourth time I bred them, or third season, because they breed multiple times in a year, and I sold out of all of them. So they did pretty well there.
Cool. Cool.
And they're pretty cool because one nice thing about them too is there's not many frogs that are, or many animals that are naturally fluorescent. Like, you know, when a scorpion goes under a black light, it glows.
Yeah.
These guys are fluorescent. They have that characteristic. Now, I wouldn't recommend using a black light. I would use more the, I think it's called a tannic reef light, like they use in the reef tanks, to make them light. That's safe for their skin. Black light, you'll kill them if you leave a black light on all day. But they'll glow under that
Cool.
too,
Yeah.
which is kind of neat.
Yeah. Very cool. So, so now you have a couple generations captive born. You said the Atlantica is a little bit less flighty. What is the temperament of your captive bred Boana Atlantica?
They're honestly like goofy little frogs. They're so odd. I don't know how to like characterize them properly.
Yeah.
But like the females seem to want to hide more. The males don't really care. The males are very active at night, and they all want their own individual water bowl to call from, which is kind of interesting.
Okay.
But they're really easy. I mean, they're super easy frogs to take care of. They're partially aquatic, partially a tree frog. So they're kind of like, I don't know, they kind of fit a lot of criteria. They're almost a glass frog, but they're not a glass frog. You can see through them and see all their guts, but somehow that doesn't classify them as a true glass frog. But you can see through their body and see all the guts inside. So they're pretty cool. They have nice big white eyes. They look like little Kermit the Frogs, and super easy to take care of. So
compare and contrast them to red-eyed tree frogs as the standard, like size, shape, care. What are they?
The biggest they'll get is close to maybe a male red-eyed tree frog. They're not very big. They're on par with a gray tree frog. So that's about as big as they get. The females are a tiny bit bigger than the males. The females have a little bit longer neck. Their throat is blue. The males will turn like this yellowish green. So they'll get like green, yellow toe pads and a green throat. And they'll kind of look a little more compact. And then the females will be more blue and a little bit more stretched out.
And then care parameters typical for most South American tree frogs: high 70s, moderate humidity, etc.
I keep mine room temperature. I don't give them any extra heat. So my room is about 72 to 74 is what I keep my room at. And they do really well at that. They like high humidity, but they don't like to be wet. But they like a big water bowl. So they're all going to hide under leaves during the daytime, and then they come down to the ground, and they're all going to fill up your water bowls. The males particularly will go there, and they'll call from them. And they don't really do like a long, drawn-out amplex process like red-eyed tree frogs can do. The males will go to the water, and when the female's ready, and this is what's nice about this, is the males aren't out there beating the females up trying to mate with them when they're not ready. The female will choose to come down to the water, and then the male will do his thing. And they go into this like really short, brief amplex period where he basically he's just there to force the eggs out and fertilize them, and then she's on her way. And that's about it. So there's no like long riding around on amplex, which is funny because if you look at a lot of the other Boana species, they do that. They amplex for a day or more, and they ride around on them like the red-eyed tree frogs.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that the Atlantica doesn't really do that.
Cool. How do you, now I know that you're keeping a lot of them and you're breeding them, but I'm curious anyway, how do you have yours set up as far as tank decor, substrate, plants? So
it's going to be different for your use. So like if you're, sorry, I'm sitting in like the most uncomfortable chair and I have to move every so often, but it's different based on what your goal is with them. If you're keeping them as a display animal, you can have a nice live natural tank and do really well with them. If you're breeding them like I am, I keep it simple and clean so that I can monitor health and feed them. I do have plans now that I have plenty of offspring to actually move some into a display tank so I can start showing people what they can do instead of me just talking about it. I can actually show them pictures. They poop a lot, so you have to clean them a lot. So if anyone was going to do like a nice natural tank, I would say don't do any bromeliads, because they love to poop in them, and then they put their butts in them and they get prolapses and infections.
Gotcha.
I would say stay away from wood. You can do cork bark, but I wouldn't do any like wood branches that are going to absorb the water from them pooping and peeing on it,
Yeah.
unless you can take them out and disinfect them. But they need to have kind of like how I would do a mossy frog setup, where it's like they do really good in a paludarium, but the water
Mm.
needs to be filtered. You need to probably have like an external filter in the water. And it doesn't have to be deep. They don't really want deep water. They want water with tons of branches and vines growing out of it because they want to use that to climb in and out of. And that's what they'll put their eggs around. And you can put pothos in there. You can put all the dart frog plants that you see in there. Just don't
Yep.
do bromeliads or
Yep.
anything that can hold water, because that becomes a little petri dish for them to get sick off of.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's some good advice. You figure, oh, I'm setting up a rainforest terrarium. I can keep these tree frogs just like dart frogs, maybe a little bit taller of a glass box. But that's a really good point about bromeliads
Mm-hmm.
with almost any tree frog species. The water in those axils, those leaf axils, can get real funky.
Yeah, I say with most tree frogs, I stay away from wood. You can like mossy frogs can do cork bark. Cork bark's kind of been fine. I haven't really had any issues with the cork bark, but like, big branches that get wet, that can stay wet for a long period of time is probably not a good idea
Yeah,
because they just harbor bacteria. And unfortunately, tree frogs are creatures of habit. When they find a spot they like, which is going to typically be on that piece of wood, that's where they're going to go to the bathroom on all the time.
right.
So you don't want to tear apart this beautiful tank you did just to disinfect that piece of wood. But yeah, bromeliads is probably the number one thing I'd say keep away from all tree frog species. Even I wouldn't even want them near glass frogs either.
Mm,
They just become a little petri dish for them.
yeah, interesting. I've had on some people on the podcast who are big into White's tree frogs and 3D printing and
Hmm.
stuff like that. And I think it makes a lot of sense. A White's tree frog is such like a big, heavy animal that finding any cage decor that can handle them takes some concern, some
Yeah,
thought. And so I like the 3D printed stuff for a lot of tree frogs because you can keep it clean. You can take it out, wash it once a week, and then put it back, suction cupped to the walls or whatever, for a lot of different tree frog species.
yeah. If you look at Pangea, have you ever heard of them? The
The gecko.
gecko
Yep.
guys. Yeah, they sell a lot of good stuff for tree frogs. The fake plants that they sell that have the suction cups, I use them for my like Volante, my bicolor, like the Phylomedusa species. I have Boana picturatus too, which I have a mix of real plants and then some of that because it fills in the space really nice.
Yeah.
But those are really nice. And then another thing that I've been doing and experimenting with that I've had good results with like the Phylomedusa species in general, because they don't like it wet, but they need humidity. And they need a lot of space. Is Pangea sells these PVC tanks
Yep.
for geckos, and they're blacked out on the sides and back, and it's got a glass door in the front and a screen on the top. So that way I can put a UVB light above them, and they're tall. So I can put a big water bowl down there and mist them once a day. I also run a humidifier in my room, which keeps the room at like a
Right.
50% humidity at a minimum.
Right.
And they're doing really good that way. And the tanks are super light, so if you have to tear one of those down to clean it, they're so light. They're just made out of PVC.
That's cool. Are they do they have aluminum frames? I haven't seen the Pangea tanks. Are they all
I think
PVC or
it's
do they have
aluminum.
is it like aluminum frames? Is it almost like a
So
ReptiBreeze but instead of screen it's thin PVC?
yeah, I'm looking at one now in front of me. It's got metal sides in each corner that go straight down, and then the screen on top is actually really nicely made.
Yeah.
It's metal, like a nice tough screen, and then everything else is PVC besides the glass door. They're strong too, and they're light.
Cool.
I think it's just painted aluminum. It's black.
Right, right. Yeah, because I've been looking a lot into tree frog enclosures, and I like lightweight stuff because I want to go big, but I don't want big glass. I don't want 36-inch glass because it's just
Yeah.
so heavy and cumbersome to deal with. And yeah, I discovered there's sort of like the typical bearded dragon PVC tanks and in different sizes and shapes, like what Dubia.com sells, where
Hmm.
it's black PVC sheets secured to one another, but then there's a different style. All this stuff is made overseas. The other style is like you take one of those ReptiBreeze screen cages, and
Hmm.
so it's all aluminum frame in all the corners. But then instead of just having the all screen chameleon cage, they're using very, very thin PVC sheets that are supported by the aluminum frame, and then they're putting a plexiglass front door on. So again, you only end up with the screen in the lid. I'll have to check out
Yeah.
what you mentioned with the Pangea product or whatever they're selling.
Yeah,
That
the
might be
Pangea is
similar.
they use real glass too. It's not
Okay,
plexiglass doors, and
nice.
they're really nice. It's got the big one's got 2 locks. I have a small one for a gecko that I have.
Yeah,
The small one's probably good for like keeping small tree frogs. Now it's over here. I'm looking at it. They're probably good for keeping like small tree frogs in there, but I wouldn't use them for anything big. The
are
the big one they
they
sell is perfect.
are they waterproof? Could they hold an inch of standing water in the bottom, or do they leak?
I don't know. So I don't think they would hold that much water. So I have a guy that I'm talking to that does a lot of 3D printing, and I'm trying to see if he'll 3D print me a bottom to
Yeah,
one of the large ones that's maybe like 4 or 5 inches tall, so that I could drill it and put like a drain in it because I want to turn one of these into a rain chamber because I like the idea that I could take it apart.
right.
When you start talking to like guys like Novi who brings a lot of tree frogs, that's the one thing that kind of stinks sometimes is you have these rain chambers that are just taking up all your space,
Mm-hmm.
and you might go through periods of the year where you don't want to try to breed something. So if you can turn one of these into a rain chamber, I mean, you could disassemble it in minutes and put
Yeah,
it back up in 10 minutes, and move it around your house if you need to move it. Plus, like if you want to try and breed some of your stuff outside. So like down here in Southeast Tennessee, the summertime and late and spring is great weather to bring tree frogs outside if you have a secure way of doing it. So like the Phylum would love our crazy tornado season that we have out here.
yeah,
They'd probably go nuts.
yeah. Cool. So yeah, I saw that you picked up some Phyllomedusa at Tinley. What do you and
Yeah.
you've had some before. What do you what do you have for large tree frogs, tropical tree frogs?
So I have a bunch of young Phyllomedusa bicolor. They're growing really fast. Feed them every day.
Yeah,
I got some from Gecko Daddy out in Utah. They're
nice.
really, really nice frogs. And then I got some Volante. That's what I picked up actually at Tinley.
Gotcha.
It was one of those things where I'm like, I've had a bunch of these species over the years, but the one species I always skipped over and regretted was Volante. So when I went to the show and I was at the same table as Mike Novi helping him out, he had some for sale, and I said, "Can I just buy those off you? Like, why? Let me try them." So yeah, I got a nice group of adults, and those in the Picturatus that I have, the other Boana, they're gonna be a springtime breeding project this year for me. I've been fattening them up, getting them nice and healthy. And this is where I was saying that it's kind of similar with Ameerega. When you breed, it's like you have to plan ahead for these seasons.
Yeah,
So like with tree frogs, because I think you're doing red eyes, right?
I have some red eyes. Yeah,
Yeah, so you'll want to get them nice and fat now so that you can use the assistance of, the
yeah,
springtime weather where you get more rainstorms and the barometric pressure changes to entice them to breed. So this is the time of year right now to really get them nice and chunky, and get so they're ready for that. Ameerega the same way, like you want to get them chunky. Their seasons are a little different though, like not exactly like the tree frogs.
yep.
My Ameerega for some reason love to breed in January.
Hmm.
Don't know why. January, February. It's weird because we typically don't see a lot of the storms coming in here until like March or April.
Yep.
But they start to like you can see the females get gravid at that time, and then they'll lay their eggs maybe a couple weeks before our springtime weather rolls in. So they seem to like it down here.
Yeah. I mean, it matters where you are in the country because
Yeah.
what's going on outside has such a huge impact. Even with our misting systems and our lights on timers, they really are tuned into the natural world.
Yeah, when I bred Ameerega in the Northeast, they would breed in the wintertime during blizzards.
Yeah.
It's all where you live. The barometric pressure changes are the most important thing. Temperature can influence a little bit, but as long as your temperature is the right temperature for Ameerega, if like you keep dart frogs at like somewhere like 72, 73 degrees, you can even go up to 76 if you want, or 78. It doesn't matter as long as your temperature there, you're good. It's the barometric pressures that really get them going.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like I can tell 2 days. I look at my weather and I say, oh, it's going to rain in 2 days. My Ameerega already start calling, and the epidobates I have will start calling a day or two ahead of time. I go, yeah, it's going to rain.
Yep. Cool.
So they can sense it way before we even see it.
Yeah. So you mentioned you attended Tinley Park Show Reptile Expo this past October 2025. You vended with Mike. What was the show like from an amphibian perspective, from both
It was really
a
cool.
seller and a hobbyist perspective?
Yeah, so it was the first time I've ever been there. For years he's been saying, you need to come, you need to come. And I finally said, you know what, I'll make that 8-hour journey. We'll just do it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did. I was very successful there, and it was really cool. There's nothing in the Northeast like it. The closest thing in the Northeast there was would be like White Plains,
Right.
and I still don't think it's anything like Tinley. It was another whole animal in itself, and it was a lot of fun. It's a 2 day show that really is like 2.5 days because when you show up on Friday, they have VIP passes. So like while you're setting up, people like trying to buy stuff from you already. So, if you guys ever go to Tinley, if anyone's watching this, and you show up Saturday morning and there's stuff missing, it's VIP tickets are on Friday. So if that's the case, you might want to get it. But there was a lot of people with a lot of stuff. There's a gentleman, I forgot his last name, but Jake, you see on
Oh yeah.
Facebook, the salamander newt guy.
Yep.
He's there. I couldn't find his table though, but I mean he was very popular, and I bet you he was down the aisle from me. Is probably where that big swarm of people were on a Saturday morning. Because then I saw people walking by with newts. I'm like, yeah, he's somewhere down there. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. I bought a Tokay gecko there, captive bred Tokay gecko, who I'm attempting. We're attempting to figure each other out.
Yeah.
He was nice and calm at the show when I held him, and he was young, and now he's kind of like, he's not mean and aggressive, but he's very afraid of me. So like he'll rear up and try to snap at me if I touch him. So we're figuring each other out. I guess I gotta work with him a little bit longer because I've always loved Tokay geckos, and to see a captive bred one that looks like it's right from the wild that I could work with, I'm like, let's try it.
That's fun.
So that's
funny. I see no appeal with Tokays. Personally,
well,
I get why other people are into them, but personally, I'm like, nah, not for me.
There was 2 ladies there that had nothing but captive bred Tokays, and all of them were so handlebar, and they were so tame, and like they were letting me hold them.
Yeah.
They'd sit on your shoulder, and they're almost as big. They're not as big as the lychees, but they're pretty damn big,
Right.
and they're pretty stocky, and they're beautiful geckos. And there's actually different color morphs, which I didn't realize, which I'm not too worried about that, but I just was like, I've always wanted one as a kid, like the one gecko I've always liked, but was too afraid to ever own, because you go to the pet store, they're wild caught. Just walking by the tank, the thing's trying to attack you through the tank, and you're just like, whoa, screw this thing. So that's something to work on. But if people are watching this and you haven't gone to Tinley and you can go, definitely go. A word of advice: if you want to get a hotel, so the show is connected to a hotel, so you can stay at the hotel next to it. There's also another hotel, but if you want to get a hotel, you need to get like it reserved 6 months or more in advance.
Yeah,
because it sells out fast. Because all those vendors basically, when they're leaving, they're signing up for the next show and the show after that for the year. So the stuff fills up fast. But it was a blast. It was kind of like a reptile show / party / hang out with a bunch of people. It was fun. It was kind of sad when it ended, but I was kind of tired of, so I was like, maybe it's a good time.
Right. I'm curious, were there a lot of dart frogs for sale there?
Yeah.
And did you get a chance to walk around yourself and look at all the tables? Yeah.
Yeah, I walked around, and I would say there was a lot of dart frogs for sale. There wasn't a large variety of vendors doing it, but the vendors who had a good amount. I brought a decent amount, and Novi, who was talking with Rainforest Junkies, he's mostly a tree frog guy. He's starting to do darts also, so he's like half and half. And so he brought a bunch. I brought some. Then you had Edgewood darts down the table for me. And then across from me, there was Tree Frog Connection with Jay. He had some dart frogs, but he's specifically mostly tree frogs. You had Josh's frogs there, and you had Jared with Roofing's Reigniting.
Yep.
He's right next to me and Mike. So like you come in that door, you take a right, it's Jared, Mike, me, Edgewood. So you got like a bunch of dart frog guys there.
Yeah.
And then further down was Jake with the newts, and then down another way was Jay with some more tree frogs, and then Josh's frogs, I think, was like in a different direction, kind of in a big spot by themselves.
Right.
So we could use more, but I mean, between the guys over there was plenty. I mean,
yeah,
I had a good time. I ended up selling out of everything I brought. All the Ameerega that I brought sold out, so that did really well.
Cool. When I called you a few months ago because I really had one question on my mind, and it was about dart frogs, and it was about, I was like, I felt like I was missing something. I felt like the dart frog hobby must be hiding somewhere online that I didn't know about, because there was like, I just went looking for some certain morphs of Aratus and just some other things. And, when you Google, you really just get like the top 3 big websites. You get Josh's Frogs, Frog Daddy, and a few others. And so I was like, well, I can't trust my Google results because I know that there's so many other people just on the hobbyist level breeding and selling dart frogs. They're not in the Denderboard forums. They're not really on Morph Market yet. I checked out MeWe, which is like, if you don't know, MeWe is like a spin-off Facebook type thing that when Facebook banned the sales of live animals, at one point a lot of dart froggers moved over to MeWe.com, but like
Yeah,
it's not very active. There's some people there,
it's
but
hit or
not a lot.
miss.
It's hit
Yeah.
or miss. So like I remember I called you, I called like 4 or 5 other people that I knew. I was like, where are you guys finding frogs? And everyone had the same answer. They're like, you're not missing anything. They're just not, what you're looking for isn't available.
Yeah,
So what
well,
do you think's going on in the hobby?
I do. So, not to get too much into details because I think a lot of people know this. We had a prominent dart frog company kind of go out of business for some legal things that happened, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
That was a big hit because that individual was working with a lot of high-end rare stuff.
Was he had a really nice website, but was he really
Yeah.
cranking out the numbers of the things listed on his website, do you think?
Some
Was
of
he
it,
actually
yes.
producing what he said he was producing?
Some of it, yes. Some of it, no. And some of the harder stuff to find was basically what happened is you'd go on the website, you never see it available. So you'd reach out to that person directly, and then they kind of put a list on the side and
Sure.
sell it that way.
Yeah.
And then some of the stuff, yes, he was producing, but when that went down, we were worried about some of the Tinctorius possibly being gone from the hobby because he had some that really no one was really working with.
Yeah.
Um, Tinctorius, just like before that had happened, it was hard to sell Tinctorius. Like the frog market, it's all over the place, up and down. I mean, I remember seeing people selling powdered blues for $25
Same.
just because they
Yeah.
couldn't get rid of them.
Right.
Costa Rican Aratus were going for $15-$20. Like, and then, COVID happened and then everyone got into it. So there was a huge demand. And then that business went out of business. And then people were shifting to selling tadpoles to keep up with these demands. And I don't hate buying and selling tadpoles, but I think it should be done by people that can do it, that have the ability to do it, like I said earlier. But some of these species back in the day, we weren't selling tadpoles, so they all were raised up to froglets. Like no one was
Right.
selling tadpoles. Maybe you trade with someone local, like when you're in Maine and I was in Massachusetts. If I drove up 3 hours to see
Yeah,
you
yeah.
to look at some stuff, I think you gave me some green and white Aratus tadpoles
Sure.
back in the day, and I raised them up. That's fine because they're just 2-3 hours from the house. But no, we weren't shipping them typically. At least I didn't see many people doing that.
Right.
So now some of these species just don't make it to froglets because they're rare to begin with. There's a wait list probably for them anyways, and they're just buying them up as tadpoles. So some stuff is harder to find.
Here's what, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I guess DFC was did have a hold on or was contributing significantly to the market for available captive bred dart frogs, and that did abruptly change. When you talk about the,
Yeah, because
go ahead.
I was just gonna say for a while it was DFC, Houston Dart Frogs, and I guess Josh's
Yeah.
were the ones that were working with some odd morphs. I didn't see Josh's frogs have them available as often as I saw Chase seemed to always have everything available.
Yeah.
I went to him for stuff in the past, but I think he's told me he's merged kind of with Alex with Frog Daddy, kind of helping him out.
Right.
So it's kind of like a joint adventure between the two of them. So that's why you see Alex with a bunch of stuff. But if there's only 2 or 3 guys doing it, and at the time some of these morphs just weren't even desirable, and they're having a hard time selling them.
Yeah.
Like we had this Aratus morph called the Black Kapari morph that I thought I think it was only DFC had or something.
Those in me below.
I don't even know.
Do you know what me below are?
Yeah, I don't even know where it is.
With the little like turquoise spots.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I did is when I saw that happen, I actually went out and I hunted down some harder to find species of Aratus just to make sure they're not gone. Like I have some stuff it's hard to find. Like I have Cano Aratus, Acon Hills. There's another one I'm blanking out on that I have in another room. Then I have, yellow Truncatus.
Right.
Those were $25, $20. Some people would get away for free, 10 years ago. They're hard to find.
Yep.
I got a big group of them, and I even have the blue variants of those. I have yellow Galax. Yellow Galax were the cheapest Galact. Now they're the hardest one to find. Right. Besides like the really, really high end, like the moonshine ones or whatever. So you can find oranges, you can find reds, you can find blues.
Yeah.
The yellows are just.
It's true. It's easier to buy a peacock tinctorius than it is a lafume tinctorius because you just can't find them.
Yep.
Or it's easier to buy a solid blue galactinotus. There's more people working with those than just the old line of red galax, you know?
Mm-hmm.
With the whole COVID bubble, you know, I would have expected the increase of people keeping dart frogs because of all hobbies grew during COVID because we were all at home and getting government checks. I thought it would have been like what happened with crested geckos, where in 2020, when we all got
Everything
told
got
to
cheap.
stay
Yeah.
home, everyone bought up. I'm just going to use crested geckos as an example, but it's an analogy for dart frogs. Everyone bought up some crested geckos and started becoming little hobbyists. I'm going to have 5 or 6 tanks of crested geckos, and they're easy to keep, easy to breed. So I'm going to be a hobbyist breeder. And so 2020 demand was way higher than supply. But then that bubble
Mm-hmm.
peaked because everyone who bought crested geckos in 2020 bred them and were selling babies by 2022.
Yep.
So I would have, and now there's no shortage of crested geckos. And, you know, crested geckos come in morphs. So if you want lily whites or pinstripes or harlequins or cappuccinos, they're very abundant and easy to find. I would have assumed the same thing would have happened with dart frogs, that in 2020, everyone bought up everything that was available, became dart frog hobbyists. It's a very addictive hobby. You don't ever just have one tank. You like fill a whole rack or fill a whole room with dart frogs. It's very fun and addicting to collect them all. And dart frogs are easy to care for and easy to breed. So how come in 2022 the market didn't come back roaring with availability? And here we are in 2025, and it's harder to find stuff today than it was 6 years ago. I honestly can't explain it.
I think it might be simpler than we think. I think, you know, you and I look at dart frogs as easy to keep. Look, we had forums to teach us stuff, and there's a lot better information on those than you'll find on Facebook.
Sure.
Because Facebook's reliant on one guy to say it in a crowd of 20 different
20.
people saying different things. Yeah, and I just don't think that maybe a lot of people knew what they were really getting themselves into. I think some stuff disappeared. I mean, I can tell you firsthand, when I moved to Tennessee, the conversations I had with some people about some of the really rare Ameerega that I had at the time, I said, hey, you got to keep working with these, and
Right.
let's keep in touch. I should have wrote it down, write it all down in a notebook, guys. If anyone's watching this, don't rely on Facebook to be around. I didn't realize my account was going to get hacked and I'd lose all my messenger information. I had everyone cataloged in there so I could reach out to them. But there's a lot of people that will come up to you and they'll say, oh man, I want to work with those. I'll do this. I'll do X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to let this happen. I want to keep the species and move them on. And they don't. So either something in life gets in the way, or they can't do what they said they were going to do. And then you end up losing a species, or it becomes incredibly hard to find. Like Ameerega, just like I said before, they're not the easiest ones to work with. I wouldn't call them, they're easy to take care of. Care-wise, super easy. Breeding, another level. It's not. It becomes much harder to breed them and raise them up than it is just to keep them alive. And if people aren't ready for that, you're not going to have success. If and I don't know, maybe there was just a lot of people interested. It spread what we had out too thin.
Maybe.
And all it took was a handful of people to fail, and then we lose something or we can't find it again.
Yeah.
Because there just wasn't enough frogs to go around with how many people were coming in that fast a period of time.
Yeah, I guess I have to stop being surprised because, like I pointed out earlier, I've come to realize and appreciate this reality that, for example, when Ameerega pepperi was being consistently bred by Mark Pepper and available into the United States twice a year, then they were available. And like you'd think to yourself, well, geez, he must be selling, like over the last 10 years, he must have sent several hundred Ameerega pepperi into the States, into hobbyist hands. And so you'd figure that there'd be at least a couple people producing and selling them. But when Mark Pepper sort of scaled back his collection and his breeding efforts, and they weren't as regularly available from him, then you went through this, you look around, you're like, how do I get my hands on these? I can't find any.
Yeah, I think with me, all the Ameerega I had at the time, I was breeding and I was selling. They just don't breed. You'd have to have multiple tanks of the same species to breed them on a big level.
Yeah.
You can get a couple big clutches a year, but if you want to have them consistently throughout the year available, you really need to have 3 tanks for just green tribs, 3 tanks for orange tribs, and kind of like do that, like really commit to it. And when I was breeding these things, I had 1 or 2 tanks, mostly just 1 tank of everything. And I actually had a hard time selling the stuff.
Yep.
Like it's, if something disappears from the hobby, then everyone wants it. And then everyone just goes, oh, I don't want it anymore. And then it happens again. It's like this.
It sure
this is what it just constantly does.
Yeah.
Like I was breeding Hanelli like crazy. A small little leaf frog, Ameerega. It's not the nicest looking one. It's kind of black and white with a little brown legs and orange spot on it. Where are they?
Yeah.
They're nowhere to be found. I bred the hell of it, but no one would buy them from me. And I actually, when I sold some stuff to move, I gave them away for free with someone else that was taking some of the greenback. I think they took the greenback tribs. I really wish I could figure out who it was. I'd love to try to. Hopefully, they watch this.
If you're
go,
watching,
oh, yeah, I was the one that got them.
If you're watching this podcast,
please reach out to me.
Please message Craig Goddard.
Yeah, because I'll do anything to try and get those going again. But yeah, it's just Abicio were kind of the ones that would sell the most, but but even back then they weren't reliably sold all the time.
Yep.
I mean, it's hit or miss. I mean, even Mark, when he was selling, bringing him in, that's why you were getting adults and subadults all the time, because he kind of would hold on to them a long time because they wouldn't just sell instantly. But you'll see this anytime there's a frog that's like missing or hard to find. A bunch of guys will say they want to work with them, and then 2 years later you'll see one of those guys still working with it, and the rest will have faded away. So
sure. Yeah,
it's probably going to be the same thing again. You'll see like me and handful of people want to do it, and then 2-3 years later you'll probably see a couple of us doing it.
On a positive note, this is what keeps this is a reality that keeps the amphibian hobby fun and interesting, because you can chase after rare things that aren't just the newest thing. You can chase like truncatus, a simple, very nice little dart frog, black with yellow stripes. You could chase down like 2 or 3 old lines, and like if they're even out there, that is. And that could be your thing, is like a niche like that, or like what you're doing with trying to have, a good, respectable collection of breeding Ameerega. There are so many dart frogs available in the hobby. There's so many amphibians in general available in the hobby, that as a hobbyist, you can really contribute to the community by niching yourself down into a hyper-focused area of the hobby and taking it really seriously. I've told you, and I've told this audience, that's what I'm trying to do with Mantella. I'm trying to have large numbers of multiple bloodlines of different species of Mantella, because that's what I've seen. I've seen their popularity come and go, and when wild collected imports of Mantella don't come in, they seem to disappear from the hobby, despite the fact that like we have their husbandry, care, and breeding down. Like it's not rocket science. But they go through that popularity wave that when every importer has plenty of golden mantellas and Baroni available, they sort of sit and they don't sell. But then like 2025, I'm not aware of any imports of any mantella coming in. Anything that was available earlier in the year were imports from October and December 2024. And I haven't, we're recording this episode in December of 2025. I haven't seen any imports of Mantella into North America, for example. And so now they're in, people are hunting for them right now because, like you said, at the moment, they're not available. So yeah, it's interesting.
It's good that you're focusing on a particular thing. Like, yeah, it'd be cool to have everything. It's really cool, but you couldn't do it.
It'd be impossible.
I don't know anyone who could do it. You'd have to have so much money to hire people to help you do it.
Right.
And at that point, it's like, now you're a business and you got other things to deal with. But like, we really do need someone that's going to focus on Mantella, because we don't really have that. And if 1 or 2 guys can do that and stick with it, that's great. But you also have other things. Like I know you still have some of your newts and salamanders, correct?
Yep. Lots of newts. Yep.
So you got that stuff going on. You have your red-eye tree frogs. Like similar to me, my primary focus is on Ameerega, but I have other stuff like the yellow galax, the truncatus. I have some species of Reigniting and tinctorius,
right?
Stuff that I want to work with because I like them, but the truncatus, or you can't find them, and I'm like, well, I want to just work with them, make sure they're available. Standard green imitator, just the standard. They call them standard imitator. They're pretty hard to find. You see a lot of the southern variabilis ones, and I actually have the standard ones. I know Lindsay and Paul Shore over at Shore Thing Exotics breed them. That's where I got mine from.
Yep.
But they're pretty damn hard to find, to the point where I was talking to Alex and he didn't even have them. So I'm raising him some up. But they were very common at one time. So even though my focus is Ameerega, I still want to have like little projects and some other stuff on the side. Right. And I enjoy newts and tree frogs. So like, I don't know. Someone puts bicolor or some Philo Medusa in front of me and I kind of cave and buy it. I'm like, shit, I'll work with these. I just like them too much.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. All right, I have 2 fun questions for you before we wrap it up. Maybe it won't be fun. I don't know, depending on your attitude. If you had to wave a magic wand and get rid of one Ameerega species from the North American hobby, and when you wave this magic wand, it's gone forever.
Oh, God.
And you had to pick one because, I don't know, like, if you don't pick one, I'm going to get rid of all of them. So you have to sacrifice one to the, like...
I know which one you're walking me into.
To, like...
I know where this is going.
I'm like the Thanos of dart frogs, and I'm forcing you to cull one Ameerega.
Get rid of one to save the rest.
Yeah, what would you get rid of? What would you eliminate from the hobby and not feel that bad about?
Wow. Thank God this is a hypothetical.
It's totally hypothetical.
Because I would make a lot of enemies real fast.
Yeah.
Silver stone eye.
Oh yeah.
Just because of the gatekeeping with that frog, the fact that they've been kind of hoarded by people that don't really do much with them. They're not rocket science. They've been in the look at it this way. Some people probably get mad at me. I love Silverstone. I don't want them to go anywhere. I'm just answering your question. If I had to save the rest, Silverstone I buy. The thing with Silverstone eye is they've been in the hobby for 9 or 10 years in the United States, maybe even longer than that. Why aren't people breeding them?
Sure. Yeah.
Why? They're my dog just walked in. They're very similar to a BCO and how you breed them and work with pepperide. Very similar to that. They're not rocket science, but they're very expensive. Mm-hmm. Like they were $1,000 a frog. Now they're down to like 600. So a lot of people like myself, I can't afford that. I can maybe get my hands on 2 of them and try to work with that as a pair. The price is just so ridiculously expensive because it's the same color as my shirt. Mm-hmm. But then a lot of people, then the ones that some people have, they don't supplement them and they turn yellow. Yeah, so they're not even that nice. Great looking at that point. It's the craziness over a red frog is insane to me. And I'd rather have all the other species if I had to sacrifice. I'd rather have Hanelli over that one. And it's not because someone's, you can't afford it.
Yep.
Silverstone, I've worked with Silverstone. It's just, I don't know. I just, the gatekeeping that involved at the price to get one, the way that they just aren't being bred. It's like, what's the point?
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting answer. I like that. That's not what I was expecting actually, but
were you expecting me to say like Hanelli or something?
Just throw
like
an ugly brown one under the bus.
No.
Okay.
You guys shake things up a little bit.
All right, so imagine you're at a different time in your life and you really want to downsize. You're not going to get rid of everything though, but you are only going to keep one species of Ameerega because you just love them and appreciate them. God. And so, you're really winding down your collection or whatever. What do you imagine would be the one that you want to hold on to?
Silverstone. I know. I'm just kidding. I was just wanted to throw that one out there to be funny. I mean, I like them all.
Right. I know.
I like the Trivitatas. Cool. Because there's so many of them. So if I get to keep them, that means I get to have plenty of them.
Sure.
There's only like 1 or 2 locales like Hanelli, 2 locales of Belingus that look pretty much the same, Colombian and Peruvian. The Pongs, that's it for them. Ingiri, Colombian. Yep, so it's like, we start picking the Bassarai. You have Bassarai Black, Chrome, the Yellow, Gold. I think there's another one I'm just off the top of my head, I can't think of. Pepperai, you have Gold Yellow, a BCO, Orange Heads. Like, I mean, there's 3 about those, but Trivs, there's a bunch.
Yep.
And there's even more out there that maybe someday we'll have. So I'd like to have them. They've always been a great frog. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Fun answers. All right, Craig, anything else on your mind, or do you just want to tell people, we've been talking for almost 2 hours. You want to wrap it up and let people know if they want to see pictures of your frogs, where should they hunt you down on the internet?
Well, right now, just look for me on Facebook, just Craig Goddard. You'll see a picture of Haluga Canyon Triv as my profile picture currently. I am working on developing my own type of website and business page. It's probably not going to show up for another 6 months. So at that point, when I have more stock, then I'll make that push to make it easier for people to get them. But for right now, just message me and reach out to me if you're looking for something, and I'll let you know if I have it. We'll be bringing stuff to Tinley, and I think in March. So if you're in that area of the woods, just check in with me and I'll let you know what I got.
Nice. Yeah.
But sorry if I offended anyone that has Silverstone eye. Trust me. I just thought that'd be a funny answer to pick as to eliminate that.
Or have bioactive tanks.
Oh God, yeah. The funny thing is all my tanks are technically bioactive, but I don't
Of
want
course
to
they
admit
are.
that they're
Yeah.
bioactive.
Yeah, of course they are. Cool. All right, Craig, thanks a lot for joining the Frog Rack podcast. Thanks everyone for listening. Like, subscribe, and share. I don't put a lot of effort on my end into promoting this podcast because I'm a bit of a Luddite. So please help me on the internet to share this with the rest of the frog community who might enjoy hearing Craig and I talk about frogs today. Thanks for tuning in. Check us out next time. Bye.